This is Pucks on the Pine Tree Pod. My name is Benjamin Kennedy. Thanks so much for joining me again this evening. We are just about an hour away from the 2024 NHL Draft out in Las Vegas. Should be a fun night. Boston Bruins sitting, at least for now, on the number 25 pick in the first round. So we will see what happens there. But since I've last been with everybody here, had a series of trades, series of transactions. Quite honestly, too much to uh, put on the board to break each and every one of them down. There's just been a lot of activity, which is fairly common this time of year as teams are getting into draft mode, trying to move up in the draft, trying to cut salaries. Um, so I wanted to just quickly highlight some of the more important moves that have happened over the past few days. We also have media availability from Don Sweeney from yesterday, his time out in Las Vegas there as he's getting ready for the draft, but he did meet with the media. Want to go over just a few of the takeaways from that presser. And yeah, let's get into it, guys. We're going to start right out of the gate here with the Washington Capitals making a trade with the Calgary Flames as the Flames continue to dump veteran players, rebuilding their organization, cutting cap. Andrew Mangiapane, forward, going to Washington, 28 years old, played 75 games last year, had 14 goals, 26 assists for 40 points. He's just a couple years removed, though, from having a 35 goal season. That was during the time when Gaudreau and Matthew Kachuk were still on the team, so it was a pretty loaded team out there. But I've always liked Andrew's game. He's a little bit of that kind of pesky type player. Has a good offensive game to him, can forecheck. I think it's a really curious move for Washington as they obviously have the aging Alex Ovechkin, a few other kind of long-term guys there, but they just make the trade for Pierre-Luc Dubois. Now they have Mangiapane. They're trying to build something there. They did make the playoffs this year. Maybe this is, them telling the league, "Hey, we're going to try to make another run at this." They do have the young Lindgren in net. So this is a really curious move. I like the move for Washington. It's kind of a low risk trade. I think they just give up a draft pick to get Manchapani, and I'm sure there were other teams in on him. Good forward, can kind of play middle six role for you. Any Washington fans out there, be really curious to know your thoughts on this trade. But I really liked it a lot for Washington, and I get what Calgary's doing. They're just shedding salary. They just traded their goaltender not just a few days ago, Markstrom. Um, and it's just one more move. We wonder about Nazem Kadri out there in Calgary as well. Smaller trade, kind of a couple lesser known players between San Jose and the LA Kings with Carl Gunstrom, forward going to the Sharks for defenseman Kyle Burrows. Um, Gunstrom played 50 games last year, 8 goals, 4 assists for 12 points. With Kyle Burrows, 73 games, 2 goals, 6 assists for 8 points. So kind of a smaller trade, but um, one for one trade. Burrows, been around for a little while. He's 28 years old. Um, decent kind of depth defenseman. I think he'll fit in with LA quite well. His plus minus last year was horrendous, but when you see the team he played on, it's to be expected. Vancouver and Chicago making some headlines this week, getting together on a trade. Chicago receiving Ilya Mikheyev and Sam Lafferty, basically for kind of next to nothing. Wasn't. This is really just truly a salary dump for Vancouver. Mikheyev was signed uh, in Vancouver from Toronto a couple of years back. Had an okay season, but was kind of overpaid and never really produced. Everybody I remember was surprised when he got that contract in Vancouver. So good on the Canucks for being able to kind of dump that salary off to Chicago. Mikheyev last year in 78 games had 11 goals for 20 assists and 31 points total. Lafferty, good kind of fourth line forward. Played 79 games last year, had 13 goals, 11 assists for 24 points. If you're the Blackhawks, obviously you're trying to surround Connor Bedard with some veteran guys. You've got tons of cap space. Um, and so if they can get anything out of Mikheyev, for that salary. I think that will be good on them, and I think Lafferty will fit a good solid role for them, someplace on that third or fourth line. And, for Vancouver, obviously just a salary dump. And it was not long after this trade was announced that they did announce the re-signings of Dakota Joshua, Teddy Bluger, and Tyler Myers. If you remember from my last video, Joshua was one of those players I had on my kind of Boston Bruins wish list. You can definitely cross him off the list now. He got a nice little pay raise for himself. And, Myers has been that big guy, tall guy, been good on the defensive lines there for the Canucks. Now he's in a situation where he doesn't have to get overplayed. He can kind of play down their lineup a little bit, where I think they get a lot more value out of someone like him. So they definitely went out and spent some money. Obviously, when this trade happened, they dumped the salary. My immediate thought is, are they going to re-sign Lindholm? Obviously, one of the Bruins' big targets. But as of recording, it does not appear that the Canucks are going to be re-signing Elias Lindholm or defenseman Nikita Zadorov, who they also picked up from Calgary. Both going to hit the market. I think both of these players are going to uh, have a lot of interest in them. A lot of teams chasing these guys down. We definitely know that Boston will be on Lindholm. Be very very curious to see what happens. But Vancouver, good on them. Dump some salary, able to open up some money to create that opportunity to re-sign some of their players. So good on them. News that came out, I believe it was last night out of Nashville, that their all-star goaltender UC Soros is re-signing. I don't believe it's gone official yet, but it's looking like an 8-year deal. Soros is 29 years old. This was a curious one, not because they wouldn't want to keep him, but they do have a good young goaltender they drafted not long ago that seemed really close to ready to go. But Saros is all world. He's, top 5, top 8, I'd say, in the league. Last year he did post a 35, 24, and 5 record, had a 2.86 goals against average and a 906 save percentage. And probably more famously, was in one of the more funny NHL commercials throughout last year. Him and I think it was O'Reilly with the no goals. I think it was a Mass Mutual ad or something like that. It was just a funny ad. Um, Asara's staying there in Nashville, 8-year contract, on its way. Be curious to see what they do with their young goaltender. Imagine there'll be some interest there as well. St. Louis Blues making some news as well. Just today, they did complete a trade for Alexander Texier from Columbus. Texier was 24 years old. He played 78 games last year, had 12 goals, 18 assists, and 30 points. 24, younger player, forward. I think has some upside, has some potential. I think it's a good get for the Blues. Can kind of work him into that group that they have out there. Uh, and familiar to Boston Bruins fans is Claude Julien has agreed to join the bench to be a assistant under Drew Bannister this year. Uh, Good on Claude, great coach. I think he's going to add an element of leadership to that organization, and I think is also, a little bit of a backup in case Bannister just doesn't make it. This is, I believe, Bannister's first head coaching job. He took over for Craig Berube last season, so this gives him a kind of veteran voice, gives him some security in case, again, things don't work out with Bannister. But I was happy to see Claude. It will be good to see Claude back behind the bench this year. I'm kind of excited to see that. So there'll be more trades to come. Like I said, we're just about 55 or so minutes away from the start of the NHL draft. Wouldn't be shocked if you see more trades. And there's been a ton of trades, with draft pick trades, teams trading up, trading down. I'm not going to report on every single one of those, but there's been just a lot of activity here over the past couple of days. A couple other players to talk about that were waived by their clubs. Veteran defenseman Ryan Suter was waived by Dallas. This wasn't a surprise. 39 years old. He did play 82 games last year, 2 goals, 15 assists for 17 points. At his age, I'll be curious to see if anybody picks him up. Not the best year for him, but Dallas making that decision to move off of him. Also out of Philadelphia, forward Cam Atkinson waived as well. 35 years old, Played 70 games last year, 13 goals, 15 assists for 28 points. I do think there'll be some interest in Atkinson. Um, he had dealt with some injuries up until last season. Was able to get through the bulk of the season while Philly, kind of rebounded, had a decent season for themselves. So Atkinson will be one to watch. And then up there on the board, I kind of put up in its own corner out of Tampa Bay, Steven Stamkos. Man, this is going to be an interesting one. As of the latest reports, uh, they are talking, the Tampa GM and Stammer and his group, they are talking. They're trying to come to some sort of term, but there's no promise that anything's going to get done. Priespa, their GM, has said, we're working, we're talking, but he very well may hit the market on July 1. Uh, there'll be probably 31 other teams in line to sign this guy. Despite him being a veteran, I think he's 34, 35 years old. He did have a 40-goal season. Centerman, leadership all the way, winning pedigree all the way. He would catapult to the top of my list if I'm a Boston Bruin GM to go out and try to get this guy. I still, as I said in my last video, I still feel like Tampa finds a way to get it done. I think there's mutual interest to get something done, but just the fact that they may hit July 1 and not have a deal in place is rather curious. He's been down this road before. If you remember years ago when he signed his last contract with Tampa, he also went out and tested the market and came back and re signed in Tampa. So may happen again, but I do know there'll be a ton of interest. I'm really going to be watching this one here. So it's kind of the you know news of the day: transactions, trades, salary dumps, all sorts of stuff happening. But busy, busy couple of days. All the GMs and teams, of course, are out in Las Vegas getting ready for the draft tonight. And Don Sweeney did have some media availability yesterday. Spoke to the media for about a half hour. And there were a few things that came out of that I just want to cover. Kind of big takeaway for me is he did say that the team will be aggressive in the market starting July 1. Their focus is middle of the ice, trying to find a centerman or two, and the defense on the back end. No surprises here. We knew this is going to be a big point and big need for the group. But nice to hear they will be aggressive. They do have about 21 to 22 million to work with. Um, Jeremy Swayman came up. That contract still not signed. He did note that Swayman remains a priority to get it done. Sounds like they're still talking. Um, Definitely sounds like he absolutely wants to avoid arbitration, as they went through that a year ago. So it'd be great if they can get this done, get it done quick, especially now that Allmark's gone. It's like, okay, let's go. Let's get him done. There's no more Allmark. We gotta get him in. I have no doubt they will. He did speak about Corpusalo and Brandon Bussey a little bit. I thought it was kind of curious. Didn't mention that Brandon Bussey, again, 25 years old, will have an opportunity to earn a spot on this team this year, and didn't really promise that Corpusalo would just be given a spot. They're both going to have to earn it. It's a situation where Corpusalo would have to pass through waivers to go down to Providence, and quite honestly, if you put him on waivers and another team picks him up, that's a whole big salary cap savings for Boston. So Bussey's going to have an opportunity. Seems curious. He did have a great year in Providence. Be something to watch. Lightning rod player Jake DeBrusk. Word from Don was that there haven't been any productive talks in a while, and most likely he's heading to free agency July 1. Zero surprise here. This is what we've been hearing really since the end of the season. Once they didn't get any deal done during the regular year, um, this seemed like the go forward plan. Seems like their numbers must not be adding up in terms of what DeBrusque wants and what the Bruins want. Um, Seeing this coming a mile away, do think there'll be some interest for sure in Jake. Those teams that don't get a Jake Gensel are going to probably be looking at Jake as a second or third option. I'm thinking he goes out west. You're hearing a little bit about Calgary. I still just think Edmonton. I think the Oilers find a way to bring him in. I think with that dynamic offense that they have, his dad works for the club. He's from Edmonton. It just makes so much sense. And I'm right, sure, it probably won't happen because it makes so much sense. But I do think Jake will be gone. Another one I'll be sad to lose, but he is what he is, guys. Okay, we all love him. He's a candid guy. He's good in the clubhouse. He is fast. He has improved his 200-foot game. I like a lot of those things that I've seen out of him. But if we're expecting him to be a 30 to 40 goal a year goal scorer, I don't think it's going to happen. If it's going to happen, it's not going to happen here. I just think it's time for both to move on. And again, I'm not shocked by this. I would like Jake DeBrusk if he came back at a 3.5 to 4 million over the next 2 or 3 years, kind of a similar contract to what we just signed with him. But if he's out there asking for 6 or 7, which he may very well get 6 million a year with some term, I'm not sure if I'm as okay with that. So again, July 1st will be really curious to see where Jake ends up. Concerning tonight and their first round draft pick, Sweeney did go on to say that it's not 100% that they keep the draft pick. Um, he didn't say there was anything urgent or pending coming, but clearly it seems like there's been some conversations and that he's not promising that they'll make that pick. There has been continued chatter around Marty Natchez out of Carolina. Very possibly the Bruins could take that first round pick, package it with something, and get on Marty Natchez. I wouldn't be sad to see that. I think Natchez would be a heck of a fit here in Boston. But keep an eye out tonight. See what the Bruins do with that pick. Dan Heinen also was mentioned. UFA obviously came back to the club a year ago and just had a very solid season for himself. Played up and down that lineup. Don did mention that meeting with the agent this week, hoping to get something done. Would like to have him back, but understanding that it's um, there's a lot of other priorities out there for the club, and basically just said to be determined. So again, hopeful for him. He is one of the few UFAs I would like to see the Bruins keep. I just think he uh, did a lot for the club. Um, Responsible player, defensive player as well. In terms of just being able to play that 200-foot game, like I said, really like him a lot. And I don't think you have to overpay him to come back. I think he liked being here. In terms of the other UFAs, there's a lot of other names. You got Patty Maroon, you got Shattenkirk, you've got Grizzlick, of course, got DeBrusk. Um, Basically saying that it's a safe bet that they're all going to hit the UFA, uh, kind of open market going into July. So if you're looking for some of those guys to resign, uh, probabilities are they're all gone. James Van Riemsdyk, another one in there, most likely gone. Listen, the team, I think, over exceeded, in terms of their results last year, but clearly wasn't enough to get the job done. Um, and you just have to do this. You have to turn the page on some of these players. And listen, we all fall in love with our guys, but I think that with this free agent market, there's going to be a lot of really fun, exciting pieces coming back in. Um, so expect some change. And as we get into next week, we're going to see uh, some change for sure. Last note that I took was he did mention Fabian Lysell, one of our prospects, probably our biggest prospect down in Providence. Um, they basically the word was that very excited about his trajectory from last year up until he had a pretty significant injury kind of towards the end of the season, a shoulder injury, a concussion, um, but a lot to like according to Don from what he saw last season. Did mention that he still needs to continue building and working on his complete game, his full game, which has been kind of the knock on Fabian. Good offensive player, but needs to clean up, be more of a 200-foot, more of a defensive style player as well. So those are some of the key takeaways from the conversation. I think we're going to see um, a really good show tonight out in Vegas. It's at the Sphere. I'm excited just to see the production of it, see what the Bruins do, see if there's any other major news or trades that come out. My hope is that I'll be coming back with another podcast probably sometime Sunday evening after the draft wraps up Saturday. Give us a chance to kind of digest what the Bruins do, what other news comes out. And then as we start Monday, July 1st, free agency hits, and I'll certainly be back next week to report on all the ongoings that happen there. So with that said, thank you all for coming and watching tonight. If you like what you're hearing, please don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and I will talk to you all again soon.